Alanna, welcome to Living Off Rentals.
Thank you, Kirby. It's so great to be here. I really appreciate the invite.
Yeah, it's great to have you. You have a pretty significant background in, the hospitality and short-term rental industry, and you've helped a lot of hosts over the years in different capacities. And I know you've kind of reinvented your business at times, and so I'm excited to learn more about the Distinguished Guest, your business, and really, kind of what it was initially and how that's evolved over the years, and how you can support support hosts to get 5-star reviews from their guests. So I think, just starting out, I'd love to hear a bit more about, how you came upon the hospitality industry and really the short-term rental space.
Thanks. Yeah. Okay. Well, so I do have a long background in actually commercial real estate. So I studied commercial real estate at school and college and university. And from there, I worked for Prudential Real Estate Investors as an asset manager in San Francisco. And I oversaw about $1 billion worth of commercial real estate in pretty much everything west of the Rockies, and a small portfolio
Wow.
that I ran of a larger $12 billion portfolio. And I left that and worked at Cushman & Wakefield, where I did investment sales on mostly office buildings in downtown San Francisco and Palo Alto. And from there, I worked for a small owner operator where we would buy commercial properties down in Silicon Valley, recapitalize them, lease them up, rehab them, and then sell them, usually like a typical 3-year hold. So that's really how I got started in real estate. So I have a very high level experience when it comes to commercial real estate. I ended up leaving my job about 10 years ago, working for that small owner operator, and had a second home in Lake Tahoe. And I decided that I was going to start renting that out. That was like 2009, I think. And so I took all my commercial real estate experience and, like most people, was just kind of learning the hospitality business and kind of married the two and just started to really implement best practices on my own. With taking into consideration liabilities and different things like that. And then from there, I decided to open a host shop where I was selling commercial linens and amenities to vacation rental owners. It was the first host shop. I think I started it in 2012, and that's how the Distinguished Guest began. And I did that until 2017, and then grew it pretty large and ended up having to transition out of an actual shop. It's a long story. That's a whole other podcast. And I transitioned into an education portal. And so I'm known for my connection to linens. And so all my vendors ended up transitioning, and now they're sponsors of my website, which is really cool. And, I am able to connect what were my old customers with the product of my vendors. So now they're just going direct to my vendors. So that's really great. And it's all commercial hospitality product that you're going to find in hotels, large hotels. I typically try and work with large institutional investors that have a long history in the hospitality industry. So you guys will find links on my blog to that, and maybe we can link to some of those in the write-up. And then during COVID, I decided that I was going to create a course for beginning vacation rentalists. I decided to do this because I have a Facebook group with 10,000 people in it, and I know everybody's at different levels, but I really try and focus on new people. My group is called New to Short-Term Rentals, Airbnb, and Hosting. And there's so many groups out there that are, I'm just going to call it a little dysfunctional. And when new people keep asking the same question over and over again, a lot of people end up getting frustrated. So I was like, hey, I'm going to build this group where everybody feels really comfortable and safe asking those same questions over and over again. And then I just started realizing, a lot of these people do have the same questions. And really, your first year of ownership is really just getting up to speed on the business. And so I wanted to create a course that really focused on that, because there's so many distractions when we're in these groups of you should be doing this, you should be doing this, you need a website. Well, your first year, you don't really need to be focusing on listing site independence or, building your own identity out there. You need to be focused on setting up your vacation rental, getting all the proper operations in place, accounting, insurance, safety, and running your property, getting them up on the listing sites, because that's where you're going to get the most bang for your buck your first year. And then once you have the process down, it's like, then it's time to start focusing on that. So that's just completed, which is really exciting. So that's kind of where I am today. And, who knows what the future holds?
Yeah. And so that course then, is it focused on hosts that own properties, or is it more focused on managers of properties? Like what's the ideal person for that?
Yeah, it's someone who's like starting out, who owns a property or is about to purchase a property, that really wants to understand the business. And so there are 20 modules, and it really is going to help you fast forward the business, right? Rather than trying to learn it on your own and trying to ask all the right questions, it just lays it all out for you in the course.
Got it.
So I say, like, if I always say, like, one cycle of the sun is like really gets you through the process, the cycle of your property, and really understanding it. So this is going to fast forward the process, right? So what you might learn in like 2 years or 1 year, you could potentially be up and running in like 3 months with all of this. But it's a marathon and not a sprint. You know that with this business. So I think it's just important to keep that in perspective and, work on things as you go, but really just creating a solid foundation for your business is what this course is going to give new owners. But it's also great for more advanced owners as well. We have a lot of swipe files in there, and signage that is already into templates that can be downloaded and created in fairly short order. So, there's a lot of resources in there that'll help fast forward the process.
Got it. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, and I agree with you in terms of, that there's so many courses out there, programs out there, that kind of, what I've noticed is it's like, here's every possible bit of information you could possibly need in 100 modules. And they kind of overcompensate for not having a defined outcome for a person with a ton of information. And it's, in my opinion, that's what Google's for. Like, every bit of information you could ever want is on Google. But, what I think a good course does is lays it out in a very step-by-step format and has a very defined transformation that person is going to go through. I have a program as well where I work with especially new vacation rental owners, and I get into a lot more of like how to buy a vacation rental, because I'm more on the investment side, and how to get it set up, how to get your new investment set up if it's your first time. So this sounds like it could be a good complement to that. So that's great. So I want to go back a little bit, transitioning from commercial real estate into short-term rentals. I guess, what did you learn in commercial real estate that made you comfortable with your vacation rentals, and knowing that this is going to work for you when you jumped into, because that was kind of 2009, that was prior to Airbnb, really. So how'd you get comfortable around it?
Yeah, well, I mean, of course, I work from some very large institutional investors and large private equity funds. And so the number one thing was their reputation, and they have deep pockets. So they're subject to lawsuits and liabilities. And you always want to make sure you have the best reputation in the market. And so those are the two huge takeaways. I mean, that's 50,000 foot level stuff right there, but those are the two large takeaways that I really got from my commercial investment days. And so, and I tell this to all my clients, there's the two most important things that you need to do when setting up your vacation rental. And this is before you're picking out a cute rug and a cute couch and all the fun things that go along with it, is that you need to cover your liabilities. And that's number one, safety, and number two, insurance. Right? I mean, we're all trying to build a legacy for our families. And without those two things, we are going to potentially fail in a very very big way. And so I think that I really try and impress on my clients two things. You need to have the best insurance in the industry, and there are a few companies out there that provide that. And you need to have a safety inspection, and you need to do everything in your power to make sure that your vacation rental home is safe for any guest that's going to be staying there. And that is a product of Justin Ford and Breezeway.
Okay. So going to the insurance first, then who do you recommend, or what I guess is different about vacation rental insurance that people should be aware of, to ensure that they're covered?
Yeah. Okay. So I've done a lot with this. I don't know if you know Darren Pettyjohn with Proper Insurance.
I know Proper Insurance. I don't know that name though.
Okay, well, Darren is one of the founders. He's
Okay.
fantastic. Has become a very good friend of mine over the years. I did a Q&A with him. We can link to that. There's a lot of great questions in there. But, they have one of the best policies in the industry, along with Property Protect. That's another one. My friend Kate also runs that company. So it's important to shop around, but it's also important to know that those are two great insurance companies, and they're both backed by Lloyd's of London. And I can speak to Darren's policy because I've used it and I know a lot about it, is that it is very comprehensive. It covers things like, if you get bed bugs, it's going to cover some, costs with that. It also is an on-premises and off-premises policy, right? And I think that is the number one thing that Darren impressed upon me when we did our Q&A, is that most policies out there don't cover your guests off premises, right? And so if you are providing them bikes, or somebody leaves a boogie board in my vacation rental in the garage and somebody else uses it and gets hurt on it at the beach, if I only have a premises coverage, then I'm in trouble and I'm going to get sued in the line of, me, property manager, whoever else. And so it's really important to make sure that your policy covers you on your premises and off your premises. Same thing if somebody gets a dog bite or, whatever it is. I mean, there's tons of examples in those videos that I created with Darren. So I think that's one of the biggest things, business law, business coverage, like, in the event of, something happens at your place, loss of income. So it's really important to dive into the insurance aspect of it. And, so that's.
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't even thought about on and off premises. Just figured if you're covered, if it covers the premises, but you're right. There's, your guests are kind of linked to your property while they're there, staying there. And then one other thing I just recently learned about insurance too, is that I hadn't thought about before, is, if you do have a loss, like your property catches on fire and has to be rebuilt, there's policies that will cover your rents or your income that you would have gotten while that property is being rebuilt. And then there's some that don't. So that's another, I think, aspect of your policy that you need to check before, you go with an insurance person. Because a lot of times it's hard to read through them and they look very similar, and one's a lot more expensive and one's less, but you got to just make sure you get the coverage that you think you got. So that's a great point. So then in terms of the safety inspection, then, so you actually have a third party come out and do a separate safety inspection of your vacation rental?
Well, you can do it yourself. So
Okay.
Justin Ford if you have not interviewed him, you need to talk to him and get him
Okay.
on your podcast. He's fantastic. And I think we all have an obligation, for those of us that are in this industry with a voice, to really make sure that his word gets out, because it's so important and it's so overlooked in our industry, unfortunately. And so he works for Breezeway. And Justin is like the number one foremost expert. And whenever there's an accident or a death or a fire or anything that happens at a vacation rental, he's always brought in. And so he and Breezeway created a platform. It's an app where you could go through and, I want to say it's like, I don't know, like 50 checklist points that you have to go through on your property and prove that you have, right? Like, I say this all the time, but it's like, people don't even realize they need fire extinguishers in their vacation rental,
Yeah.
right? It's like, you need to have a fire extinguisher in your vacation rental. And so like, those are the things that we need to get out there: smoke alarms, carbon, and the list goes on. But beyond kind of the more, what I think are obvious things, but probably more obvious to me because I have the commercial experience, there are other things that aren't so obvious, but are very important, right? Because if things come to a lawsuit or they're settling, it's going to, come down to, well, should you have reasonably been maintaining these things?
Yeah.
Or, so, Justin also has a course that he sells, which I think is really important. I've taken it. He let me take it. It's an inspector course. I don't plan on being one of his inspectors, but I was just curious because of, I'm interested in real estate and commercial, and there's so many things out there that we really should be maintaining on a regular basis and looking at and testing at our vacation rentals to make sure that they're safe. So I don't want to get too much into it. I'm not a safety expert, but Justin is the person you want to talk to. I could drop the link to, we could drop the link to his safety certification below if he's cool with that. But I think it's just really something everybody should be doing, because if you get Darren and Justin on the phone to talk about insurance and safety, together, they're like a powerhouse. And, the top issues are, pipe explosions or water damage from plumbing. And then, the list goes on from there: fires, things like that. So, once you kind of start ticking off the list of all those main things, then the risk and the liability gets lower and lower. So I think it's important for people to kind of look at the big picture. And those are the two main things that I always try and impress upon my clients that they should do first. They shouldn't be out shopping.
Yeah.
They should be securing good insurance and making sure their vacation rental is a safe dwelling.
That's really great advice. And it's advice I hadn't really gotten too much on this podcast before. Most people, like you said, are focused on the deal itself or around furnishings or all the other aspects that go into it. But it's something that's great to keep in mind. I remember when I was in the Army, I had sort of a love-hate relationship with our safety guy, because I kind of felt like, there's no defined end state to safety. You can always be more safe. So it was like the most secure job in the whole world. And he was the guy that always prevented us from like doing fun stuff, And so, so it's like, I know I need you, but at the same time, it's not, you're not the funnest guy. It's like the, on The Office, the HR guy, what's his name? That drove everyone nuts. So, it's cool. It's great to hear though, that he's got like a defined course and checklist that it's like, okay, if you cover these things, this will keep you out of trouble. So that it's not just like, you can always be more safe. So that's
exactly
great.
And my number one goal in life is to leave a legacy for my children, right? And so like, when you start reprioritizing your life, you realize, okay, these are the things that are the most important things for my business. And everything else is just fun and exciting. And the other thing I want to just say about insurance is that if you're paying $200 or $300 a year for insurance, you probably have the wrong insurance for your vacation rental. I found that out the hard way. And so that's actually how I ended up finding Darren. But you're not going to get a great policy that's going to cover you for $200 or $300. It just doesn't exist. And with that comes restrictions. So I, communicated back and forth with a very large institutional insurance company. And when I went back to ask them what I needed besides smoke detector, fire extinguisher, and did I need a deadbolt, they came back and said, this isn't short term, you can't rent to anybody for under 7 days. So the other problem is people don't really realize what the restrictions are out there on their policies. So I do rent for less than 7 days, and so if anything had happened, they wouldn't have paid out on it. Insurance companies aren't in the business of paying claims. They're just not.
Yeah. They will find as many reasons why not to pay as they possibly can. I've had that happen before when there's been a claim. So that's a great point. So you you created I saw on your website, modern hospitality guide, and it looks like there was quite a bit that went into that. Can you kind of share a little bit about how that came about and what it is?
Yeah, so that actually is going away because that's part of the course. I'm
Mm,
not totally sure. I'm going to break that out and make it a separate item, but it really goes into pretty heavy detail on how to set up your vacation rental. Different things you're going to need in it. It has lots of checklists, like cleaning checklists, deep cleaning checklists, kitchen essentials checklist. So anything that goes into running your vacation rental property on a day-to-day basis, like a lot of operational stuff. I also do a lot of cleaning hacks, setting up owners closets, what linens you're going to need, where to get the best linens, dog friendly vacation rentals, business friendly vacation rentals, accessibility. That's another thing people don't talk about a lot, right? How to have that
mhm.
conversation and what accessibility means. It's not just limited to somebody who is in a wheelchair, right? It's like somebody who maybe has vision problems, or the list goes on. But I don't
Yeah.
want to get too in depth in that. But there's a lot of things to think about when discussing accessibility. And so I'm trying to think what else is in there.
But it came as a result of interviewing a lot of hosts, right? I mean, that's where you got a lot of this data.
So that also, okay. So that's the survey. Yeah, the
Oh, okay.
survey. Okay, so the survey is a little different. So I did do a survey on the market, and I was just curious what everybody was providing at their vacation rental
Hmm.
properties. So that is a survey. I think it went out to 700 people, filled it out. But it's like, how many rolls of toilet paper are you providing? How many paper towels are you providing? It was really interesting to see the feedback, right? Because what's really neat is that once we were able to digest all the data, we were able to see, what your peers are doing and kind of what the market standard was. And I don't have all the statistics in front of me right now, but most people are providing 2 to 3 rolls of toilet paper in every bathroom, right? And so you kind of want to be up on the higher level of what these 5-star owners are providing at their vacation rental. What are some of the amenities that they are providing? Who's providing gift baskets? Who's providing robes? And it goes into a lot of detail on that. But you also have to understand that everybody's vacation rental is different. So take what resonates out of the survey and leave what doesn't,
Yeah.
because it doesn't apply to everybody. I had somebody come after me for robes or something else, or toilet paper, because their place was a tree house. And I'm like, I get it. If you have a tree
Yeah.
house, you're not going to be bringing a bunch of toilet paper up there. So you have to adjust for what makes sense to you. But it is a really good peer-to-peer survey to really try and understand what others are doing in the market.
That's cool. Yeah. And I think it's really valuable for people because there really isn't, what I've noticed being in this space for several years now, is there's really no industry standard. People ask me all the time questions like these nuanced questions, because there's so many nuances that go into a vacation rental. And so they say, okay, how many rolls of toilet paper should I leave for a guest? And it's ranges, and just like you said, there'll be answers all across the board, but you can kind of see then, okay, this is what the majority is, and this is where the expectation might lie. So maybe I want to just go one level above that. And you can see in all the different categories. So I think that's really awesome. And it answers a lot of those questions rather than just getting somebody's opinion on it. You've got some data there. So that's great. Where do you think, because this whole industry is kind of disparate. There's some people doing it really well. I recently had Tyann Marsink on and Annie McNulty, who I know and I think they're examples of people doing it really well also. And so I'm curious to hear from you who's been doing this for quite some time now and kind of understands the industry, where you think it's heading, and how people can like set themselves up for success in the future with this kind of fragmented industry.
Yeah. Okay. So I think the industry is going to get a lot more recognition. I think that COVID, not that it didn't have it in the past, but more credibility on from maybe the institutional level investors, right? And so, and I think people are starting to take notice, right? There's a lot of value, but how do you scale? Because that's the hardest part for some of these larger investors, and make it worth their while. Because
Yeah.
buying a hotel is very different from buying an industrial property. But I think people are starting to take notice. And I think that the hospitality industry is learning from the vacation rental industry, and the vacation rental industry is learning from the hospitality industry. And I would love to see more collaboration between the two. I think that would be something that would be wonderful to see in the industry. So where do I think that this is headed? And sorry, rephrase the second part of the question for me.
Yeah, I mean, right now it's like there's people who just decide one morning to jump into it, and it's like they have really, it seems like easy cash, and it can be, I think, but a lot of times those are the people that aren't necessarily doing it well, and kind of give the people who are a bad name. And then there's people who are large institutes, like the Vacasas, who are coming in and buying up small vacation rental owners like crazy. They can't get enough of them. And so I guess, do you feel like it's still going to be open to individual owners that want to kind of grow their own small business, or is it becoming institutionalized, or where do you think it's heading?
I don't think it will ever be totally institutionalized. I think that that's a whole different level of investor. But what I do think is, if I was giving someone who's about to jump into business advice, and this is something that I say all the time, is like cream always rises to the top. So, if you are thinking that you're going to run and jump into this business and it's going to be easy money, I'll just tell you right now, it's not. I mean, you can get by and throw your grandma's old bedspreads in there, but and I love investors like that, because that just makes my property more valuable, and I'm able to create, make a higher return on my investment. But I think the one piece of advice that I would give to people would be educate yourself, run a professional business, be the best in your market. And then I would also say that, it does take time. There's a lot of customer service that goes into it. If you build a better mousetrap than everybody else, you are going to make more money. And I will give you a quick example of that. I think because of my commercial background, I'm always, watching, where rates are, property values are. I mean, I'm really looking at that every other week, at least once a month, to really try and understand my market. Now, I've had, I don't know, almost 10 trips around the sun in Kauai, so I do know that market very well. But there's a lot of people in this industry who are asleep at the wheel. And I will say that while all of my other neighbors are happy getting $250 a night, possibly $350 over Christmas, I just got $1,200 a night.
Wow.
So if you do it right and you're smart about it and you build a better mousetrap, right? Where they're making $3,000 for that week, I made $10,000 for that week. And that incremental difference of $7,000 is money that I could potentially reinvest into my place. Now, that's 1 week. I'm not even talking the other, 51 weeks out of the year where I am getting at least 25 to 50% more than my competition in my condo. in
Got it.
terms of nightly rate. And so you get out of your property what you invest in it. And,
Yeah.
there's a lot of people out there that are very concerned about reinvesting money into their homes. And I can tell you that that has been extremely successful for me. And I get a lot of repeat business at my vacation rental. And I have the rates to prove it where my neighbors just don't.
That's interesting. So I'd love to hear more. So what I guess is the big thing that you mentioned reinvesting into the property. That's a huge difference between the nightly rates. So what did you reinvest in that you think drove those different results?
Well, I mean, I will give you an example of something I do that most people don't do. I have a handyman go through my property once a month. I pay him to change all the light bulbs. I pay him to clean the barbecue on a quarterly basis, deep clean it. I have him do the batteries in all the remotes and the smoke detectors and the door lock, because I have a keyless entry lock. And then I have them do an inspection of my place, right? And maybe it comes to like $200 a month. But that's money that's being reinvested in my asset. And my cleaner, who is extremely busy, who does not have the time to do those things, especially on a back-to-back turnover when we're checking out at 10 and have a new check-in at 4, I can't have that on their plate, right? Those are two separate responsibilities. And you need two separate people doing them. Plus, you have two separate people overseeing your asset and your property versus just yourself, right? So they're able to look at it with a different set of eyes and give you different feedback. And so, I look at it as an investment back into my property. I'm constantly switching stuff up, adding new signage, my linens, I'm constantly, that's like my bread and butter. So making sure there's comfortable beds, and I'm going through my linens on a yearly basis and making sure, my cleaners, if they get a stain, they pick them and then they leave them for me to deal with when I get there. And then I'll try and stain treat them and do what I need to do to them, unless they catch it and they could do it. But I've trained them that they need to be looking for this sort of stuff and then pulling things. And then, I'm constantly refurbishing my linens, to the extent that they need to be on an annual basis. I'm switching up my throw pillows, right? That's a small thing. I got new covers for my couch during COVID because it needed to be reupholstered. Well, I bought 2 sets because I was like, if something happens, I need to have an extra set of covers for my couch so that they can just switch them out like that, right? Like, we don't have time, like during a 6-hour turn, to clean the covers if something happens. So it's really kind of forward thinking. So here's another example, like cups I buy. I'm really limited on the island of Kauai. So we have like a Walmart. We had a Kmart, it got closed. We just got a Target. Which I've never been to the Target, but I'll go to Walmart and I'll buy, a set of just drinking glasses, but then I'll buy a second box. I keep the second box in my owner's closet so that if things break, who cares? Like, they can just pick a new one from the closet and put it into the cabinet. I do the same thing with my silverware. I do the same thing with my plates. So that I have you should see my owner's closet. It looks like a mini Walmart. I have like so many supplies in there. So I guess when I say investment, I'm always forward thinking. How can I make the life of my support staff easier, right? I don't want them going down to Walmart, driving 45 minutes, picking up $10 worth of glasses and bringing them back to me. Something that's like $10 now turns into a $75 project, right? And so anytime I can anticipate that, I do. I also have what I call an emergency closet that I lock, small, has a code on it, and has a set of extra small appliances. So an extra toaster, an extra coffee pot, an extra blender, so that and it has my emergency backpack in there, and then also a tool set, some water, some canned food. So there's a code on that. So I could just give it to the guest if they're having an emergency, right? So then I don't have to get my cleaner involved or somebody else involved to go get me a coffee pot to replace the one
Yeah.
that we need. So I really just try and anticipate things happening. I mean, I'm kind of getting off topic, but
No,
there's
no,
a
it's
lot of
great.
different
Yeah.
ways you can reinvest in your property.
Yeah, that's really great advice. So it's basically it's the attention to detail that has caused the return guests. And you said this is a condo, right?
It's a condo, yeah.
Okay. And we talked a little bit beforehand, and you recently decided to sell that condo. And so what was, I guess, your how did you go about that decision? Because I recently sold some rental properties, mostly long-term rentals, and it was a tough decision. There was a lot that went into it. So how did you decide that it was time for that one?
Yeah. So, well, so like I said, I'm constantly checking to see where the market is, both for rental rates and then also for valuations.
Mhm.
And so I had a long-term tenant during COVID. I got so lucky. They rented my place for 10 months.
Oh, nice.
And that was amazing because I don't know if you know, but Kauai basically made vacation rentals illegal during that time for like
Wow.
a year. They were very strict there. So that tenant ended up buying a place in June after they moved out of my place. So same complex, same 3-bedroom, 3-bathroom. And at that time, that was just this past June, they were selling for $850,000. And so
Wow.
I went online and noticed that 3-bedroom, 3-bathroom condos in Princeville were selling for 1.1 million. And, they're around 1,700 square feet. Well, my place was 1,300 square feet. And so I'm like, you gotta know when to hold them, know when to fold them, know
Yeah.
when to walk away, and know when to run. So I decided now is the time to take some chips off the table for me. I have some personal things that I want to pursue for the next 2 years. And then eventually we'll jump back into the vacation rental market. But, it was just the right time for me. Kauai is an interesting market. They got hit really hard by some of the labor constraints that we're all seeing, but being on an island, a lot of the service providers left the island because there was no work. And now there's a shortage of laborers. A lot of the restaurants are only open, Friday to Sunday.
Wow.
And so what's happened is nobody's now able to move back there because they can't afford to live there. So long story short, I mean, that's not the main reason I sold it, but I don't see that correcting itself for at least 5 years. I mean, if we ever get back to where we were there, it's just different. And so I think that for me, it was just a good time to pursue some other life dreams of mine. So
Yeah.
that's kind of where I'm headed. And so it was, twofold. It was a financial decision, but also just, I'm flying the plane of my life and building it at the same time. And so I decided that
Like
now is
we
a good
all are.
time to
Yeah.
sell.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so I close on December 3rd. So it's
Cool.
really exciting. And, who knows what the next chapter is going to bring. But for now, I'm just turning the pages.
Yeah, that's awesome. No, it's really smart. And it's interesting to hear about that because I lived in Hawaii for 2 years from 2007 to 2009. And I lived on Oahu, but Kauai was my favorite place to visit. I went there a couple times, and I mean, I think it's one of the most beautiful places in the world. Back then, I was considering trying to buy on Kauai or going back there and buying. So it's interesting to hear how it's kind of developed. Obviously, price points and short-term rental, nightly rates and that sort of thing aren't always correlated. And so it's smart to constantly be assessing that and just, know when to walk away, like you said. So when it comes, last question, I don't want to keep you too long, but you mentioned pricing and how you had neighbors that were, $250 to $350 a night, and you were over $1,000 a night in some cases. So did you use like a Price Labs or Wheelhouse pricing optimization tool, or were you setting it yourself? And how did you know that you could get that when you were pricing it that much higher?
Okay, so that's a really good question. So I do use Price Labs, which I really like their system. It's simple, but as I say, and I state this in my course too, with Price Labs, it's like you still need to know what's going on in your market. And there's a few unique things that are going on in my market right now. And so these are the things that a lot of people just aren't aware of. So I think it's on my radar because like of my historical experience with real estate. Um, so I actually figured out by accident that Christmas and New Year on the island is um, typically like almost zero occupancy and availability for
Mm.
accommodation. And so what has happened a few times is I've had like a few days between Christmas and New Year. And I have people calling me in a panic because they're like, I just got airplane tickets for $300. And I'm like, okay. And all of a sudden they buy these tickets thinking that there's going to be somewhere to stay.
Mm.
But the island is like so jam packed. There's like virtually no occupancy. So I like 6 or 7 years ago, I found these people calling me and they're like, I just need 2 days. I like cobbling 2 days here, 2 days there, 2 days somewhere else so that they can get there. And so I'm like, oh, wow, that's really interesting. So, at that point in time, this was many years ago, I think I was like at 350 a night, still higher than my neighbors and my competition. And then the next year I was like, I'm just going to push it, right? Like, let's just see where this goes. I don't care. I mean, my goal is always to be the last person to rent because I know I'm going to make the most money.
Yeah.
Although that's scary for a lot of people because
Hmm.
they don't understand that. But I know my market and I know that's how it works. So like the next year, I think I was at like $400 a night, no problem. Like got it. Like it was like 6 months in advance, and I'm like, okay. And then last year I did I think 500 over Christmas. Somebody booked Christmas week, and then New Year I was like, oh, I'm just gonna bump it up to $600. So I was like just playing with it. And then that worked out for me. And then so I just implemented pricing software a little over a year ago, maybe just right after the holidays. And I was just like playing with their numbers. And the thing about the pricing software is like you do need to know that 5% because you have to put in your base rate. So you have to know what that means. But yeah, I used the pricing software this year and just decided to really push it. And, I was able to secure some amazing rates. I think I got like $700 over Christmas and, $1,200 over New Year. So I think that another thing that's pushing that in my market this year is that one of the largest hotels, the Old St. Regis, was purchased by Starwood Capital, and they are rehabbing it into a one hotel. So there's about 300 rooms off the market right now under rehab. And that's pushing the market. And then, of course, the constraints, because a lot of people took their properties off the market during COVID, got long-term tenants. So I think there's a little bit of a hangover with inventory, people still on long-term. And that'll phase out. But, the island's small and doesn't grow that fast in terms of inventory. And if anything, they're getting more strict on the number of vacation rentals that they're allowing there. So there's just a lot of constraints there right now. And I think that that's also driving it. Whether or not I'll get that next year, or well, I won't be around to, whether or not they can get that next year, I don't know. We'll see. But those are just some of the outlying factors that I think were driving it this year, because that hotel, the Old St. Regis, was one of the more luxurious places on the market, right? And so I run my place as a luxury vacation rental. And so, people are willing to pay for that. That goes back to the comment earlier that I made about reinvesting into your property, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's really great advice. I think it carries over not just to, obviously there's very limited number of people that have rentals on Kauai, but even on the mainland, like in just a typical vacation rental market, you're going to have high seasons and low seasons typically. And I hear people a lot say, oh, I'm so excited. I got my whole summer booked up and it's only March. And I kind of cringe a little bit because I'm like, oh man, if that's the case, you probably just left a ton of money on the table. Because like you said, as you get closer, to that high season, just there's less and less inventory, and you can, you know, a lot of times book for a higher price. So I do the same thing. I start high, and you know, I'll drop it a little bit if we're getting really close, but a lot of times, you know, you can book up these higher, or I guess lower vacancy time periods at a much higher rate than you think you can. And that same property can sometimes rent for $100 a night and $500 a night. And it's not about the property necessarily. I mean, obviously it has to be a nice property, but it's about the supply and demand. So that's some great advice there. I appreciate you kind of laying that out for people. Well, this has really been helpful. I really appreciate your time today. If people are interested in your course or just finding out about distinguishedguest.com, just go to the website. Is all the information there, or what's the best way?
Yeah, the best way is to just go to the website. You guys can drop down on courses, and then there's all the information there about the course. There's also a link on the sidebar on a majority of the pages where you guys can get access to the Facebook group if you want to join that. And then, you know, there's a ton of information on the website about linens and all of the amenities and toiletries and linens that I use at my vacation rental. I like to test everything before I put it on my website. I don't test everything, but I would say I probably have touch and felt like we're used 95 to, you know, 98% of the things that I'm recommending on my website, right? Back to reputation is everything. And so you guys can kind of read more about what I'm doing at my vacation rental. But yeah, I'd love to you know, help anybody with the course. I need to recommend people to your course, and then we need to work
Yeah,
together.
I know. Sounds like they complement each other really well. So
Exactly. So that we can cover all the bases.
that's awesome. Well, yeah, no, we'll put a link in there. There'll be several links in the show notes. So if you're interested in any of this, feel free to just go to the show notes and you can find it there. I really appreciate your time today, and I'm interested to continue to stay connected and see what's next.
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks.